Our 5th anniversary was supposed to be perfect. I had it planned down to the smallest detail. The morning started with me sneaking out early to pick up flowers from the shop Ellie loved, the one where the owner always tied the ribbon just right. I chose lilies and lavender because they reminded me of her. Soft, subtle, dependable. I spent the rest of the day getting the house ready. Cleaned the windows, fluffed the couch cushions, even trimmed the backyard hedges she always said made the place look like we cared. I wanted it to feel like a memory. Something she'd look back on and think he really knew me. By 5, the table was set. Candles flickering. Our favorite red chilling next to 2 glasses she insisted we only use on special occasions. I had even printed out the lyrics to Yellow by Coldplay, our road trip song, and stuck it under her napkin like a dumb, sentimental teenager. At 5:46 p.m. my phone buzzed. It was a voice message from Ellie. "Hey babe, listen, don't go anywhere tonight, okay? Just stay home. Please. I'll explain everything when I get back." That was it. No reason, no excitement in her voice. Just a weird sort of calm, like she was late to a dentist appointment. I replayed it 3 times, trying to read between the lines. Her tone was level but not affectionate. There was no "I love you" at the end. That part stuck with me. Still, I told myself it didn't mean anything. Maybe she was setting up something special for me. A surprise anniversary twist. I'd seen her stash things in the hall closet all week, and she'd been evasive about where she was going after work. I hoped she was being mysterious for the sake of romance. I spent the next few hours in a sort of hopeful limbo. Lit the candles. Reheated the pasta. Changed into a nicer shirt. Sat on the couch with the wine bottle in my hand like some domestic scarecrow waiting for a harvest that wasn't coming. When the door finally opened just after 9, Ellie walked in like nothing was out of the ordinary. "Hey, sorry I'm late," she said, setting her bag on the floor. "Work ran long and I stopped for a drink with Mia." That was the first lie. I know Mia. She's loud and laughs through her nose. Ellie always comes back with a buzz and stories when they go out. But tonight she was too composed. Too smooth. Her smile was faint, mechanical. Not tired, not warm. Just practiced. Before I could say anything, the scent hit me. It wasn't her perfume. Ellie usually wore this clean, floral scent, something light that lingered just enough to make the sheets smell like her the next day. But this was different. It was musky, masculine, almost aggressive. And it clung to her like a second skin. My heart dropped a little. I didn't say a word. That's when I noticed the jacket. It was a man's black denim, a bit too large with wear along the cuffs. Not her style, not even close. She held it like it was hers, but it clearly wasn't. She must have seen the look on my face because she raised it slightly and said, "Oh, this? Someone left it at the bar." I grabbed it by accident. It looked like mine in the dark. Another lie. Ellie doesn't wear denim jackets. She hates how stiff they feel. She says they're too bulky and make her look square. I bought her one for her birthday 2 years ago. It still has the tag on it in the hall closet. Still, I nodded. My eyes drifted to her neck. There was a faint mark just under her jaw. Not a bruise, not quite red, but something. Like a graze. Like someone had been close enough to leave their skin behind. She brushed past me into the kitchen. "I'm starving," she said. "You didn't wait for me, did you?" I stood there, my mouth half open, wine glass in hand, candles nearly burned down to puddles. She didn't look at the table. Didn't notice the flowers. Didn't ask about the music. She opened the fridge and pulled out a can of soda like it was just another Tuesday. "I got us ravioli from Rossetti's," I finally said. My voice sounded small. "Oh," she said, glancing back over her shoulder. "That's sweet. We should heat it up later." Not we should've. Not thank you. Just later. Like this wasn't the night I'd spent the last week planning for. She was cool. Detached. Not cold exactly, but distant. Like she had just stepped out of a different life and hadn't figured out how to return to this one. I didn't know what to say. I wanted to ask her who the cologne belonged to. Who she was with. What the hell the voice message meant. But the words caught in my throat. So I just stood there watching her drink that soda like it was nothing. Like we hadn't promised each other 5 years ago that this day would always mean something, even if life got messy. Even if the world fell apart. Something had changed. She gave an explanation. She always had explanations. They used to feel honest. Not anymore. Her tone had the steadiness of someone who'd practiced what to say. Who had played out this conversation in her head and found a way to make me feel small for even wondering. "You look tense," she said. "Long day?" "Yeah," I wanted to say. "Long enough to notice that you aren't wearing your wedding ring. Long enough to hear the second voice in your message, barely audible under your words. Long enough to realize I'm the only one who thought tonight mattered." But I didn't say any of that. I just nodded, smiled like an idiot, and told her the food could wait. She showered. She always does after a night out. Usually she hums in the bathroom. Not tonight. The water ran for 15 minutes and the only sound was the faucet and the faint clink of the shampoo bottle. When she came out, her hair was damp and combed flat. She smelled like vanilla conditioner again. The cologne was gone. Scrubbed away. She sat beside me on the couch, scrolling through her phone, legs tucked under her. I stared at the screen for the 10th time, replaying that voice message in my head. Trying to find a crack in it. A tell. Something I missed the first time. Hey babe, don't go anywhere tonight. I didn't. And she came home wearing someone else's scent, carrying someone else's jacket, and leaving me with someone else's silence. I lay awake that night while she slept beside me. Her breathing even, peaceful. My eyes locked on the ceiling. I kept waiting for it to feel normal again. For the familiar comfort of her hand finding mine under the covers. For her to roll toward me in her sleep like she used to. But she didn't. She stayed still. Like the truth does, once it's settled. The thing about red flags is that they're rarely bright red at the time. Most of the time, they show up like faded pink smudges in your memory, only turning crimson when you look back and finally admit to yourself that you ignored them. After that night, our anniversary that never really happened, I couldn't stop replaying things in my head. And not just the obvious stuff, the jacket, the cologne, the mark on her neck. I started dragging up memories from months ago, things I'd brushed off with a laugh or a shrug, chalking them up to stress or routine or the slow burn of two people coasting. Ellie had changed. I know people change. God knows I'm not the same guy I was 5 years ago. But her changes weren't the kind you celebrate. They weren't growth. They were withdrawals. Quiet, strategic retreats from our life together. It started small, her phone habits, for one. She used to leave her phone lying around, screen up, barely ever locked. She hated how complicated passwords were. If someone wants to see my texts that badly, she used to say, they're going to be disappointed. Then one day, she had a new passcode. I found out because I tried to check the weather on her phone during breakfast and it locked me out. She gave me a sheepish look and said it was a work thing. Security updates, she called it. That was the first smudge. After that, she started taking calls on the balcony. Always the balcony. Rain or shine, day or night. I'd catch her out there in her coat, speaking in low tones, pacing slowly. When I asked who she was talking to, she'd say things like, "Ugh, Jenna from the West Coast team," or "client drama." You don't want to know. But I did want to know. That was the difference. Then came the taxis. Ellie's car was fine, new tires, recent oil change, nothing wrong with it. But she started calling cabs for the smallest errands. Parking *CK's downtown, she'd say. Or, I might have wine and don't want to risk it. But on random Wednesday nights? For grocery runs? It didn't make sense. I even checked her mileage once when I was cleaning out her car. She hadn't driven it in over a week. Another smudge. I remembered how she changed her perfume. At first, I loved it. It was subtle, warm, and unfamiliar in a good way. Trying something new, she told me. That old one started giving me headaches. But I realized something strange. She only wore the new scent on days she said she was working late. The rest of the time, she smelled like nothing at all. Just skin and shampoo. Work, too, had taken on a new rhythm. Ellie used to vent about her job constantly. She'd come home, kick off her shoes, and dump a pile of drama on me about clients, coworkers, deadlines. It was part of our thing. But lately, silence. When I asked how her day went, she'd just say busy or same as usual and change the subject. If I pressed, she'd smile and say, you wouldn't believe how boring it is. That was the thing. Ellie didn't used to hide behind smiles. Her face used to be a window, not a curtain. The kitchen was another place I started noticing things. She'd sit in there with her laptop open, facing the door like a teacher monitoring a test. Just catching up on emails, she'd say, though sometimes I'd pass by and realize there were no keystrokes. The screen would stay on the same page for 20-30 minutes. I couldn't even hear typing. And when I offered to sit with her or bring her tea, she'd wave me off. I just need to focus, she'd say. One night, I walked in and she flinched. That's not something people do when they're answering emails. Then there was the eye contact or the lack of it. Ellie used to look at me when we talked. Not just during the good stuff, during fights too. Especially during fights. She hated leaving things unresolved. Let's not sleep angry, she'd always say. No one wins that way. But lately, she'd stare past me when we argued. Like she was listening to a podcast in her head and waiting for it to end. Her answers got shorter. Her tone was more clipped. And her eyes, they just didn't search mine the way they used to. They stopped seeing me. I'd ask where she was going and she'd say, out. If I asked with who, she'd answer, just friends. But no names. No details. And God forbid I followed up, then I'd get the look. The one that says, you're being paranoid. Stop making this a thing. So I stopped. I stopped asking where she was going. I stopped watching the clock when she stayed out late. I stopped reaching for her hand at night when she'd roll over to the far edge of the bed. I convinced myself it was just a rough patch. That every couple goes through lulls. That we were just tired. But the truth was, I'd been scared. I didn't want to be the guy snooping through drawers or checking her phone or asking her friends weird questions. That guy always looks like the bad guy in the stories people tell later. But worse than looking paranoid was the fear of being right. Because if I was right, then everything we'd built was already cracked and I'd just been pretending not to notice the sound of it breaking. I remember one night in particular. She came home late, said she'd been with coworkers for drinks. I was on the couch watching a movie and she walked in, dropped her keys in the bowl, and sat down next to me like we were strangers waiting for a train. She didn't lean into me. Didn't ask what I was watching. Just sat there, scrolling on her phone. And I knew. I didn't have the proof yet. But I knew. There was this calm in her, this eerie composure that only exists in people who've already made a decision. Her movements were mechanical. Her smiles felt like they belonged to someone else. Like she was borrowing a personality to get through the day. When I said, I love you that night, she didn't say it back. She just smiled. A tight, distracted smile. Night, she said, and turned off the light. I laid there in the dark, heart-thudding, staring at the outline of the ceiling fan. My mind was spinning, reaching for some explanation that wasn't what it looked like. Maybe she was depressed. Maybe she was stressed. Maybe I was just being oversensitive. But I wasn't. Somewhere between the missed calls, the vague answers, the phantom scent on her clothes, and the laptop that never typed, something had unraveled. And I was finally seeing the threads. A week after our anniversary, the night she came home smelling like someone else, I found the proof. I didn't go looking for it. Not at first. I wanted to be wrong. I wanted to believe it was just a weird night, a misunderstanding, one of those things that couples move past with time and effort and a shared bottle of wine. But the quiet between us only deepened. Ellie acted like everything was fine and I got tired of pretending. I don't know what made me check the smart doorbell camera. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was the silence in the house that felt too heavy for comfort. But one afternoon I sat down with my laptop and opened the app. Scrolled through the motion-triggered videos. Most of them were harmless, packages being delivered, squirrels darting across the steps, a neighborhood kid trying to sell chocolate. Then I saw it. The clip was timestamped 9:17 p.m., our anniversary night. Ellie stepped out of a car and walked up to the front porch. Not alone. There was a man with her. He was tall. Slim. Wearing a gray coat and black jeans. I couldn't see his face clearly, the lighting wasn't great, but I saw enough. They walked close. Not touching, but close enough that there was no casual space between them. At the bottom step, she turned toward him. He brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. She didn't pull away. They said something, couldn't hear it, but her head tilted the way it does when she's being charmed. She laughed. That little breathy kind of laugh she used to save for me. Then she unlocked the door, stepped inside, and left him out there, alone on the porch. And just like that, the denial died. I sat there, hands shaking, watching the clip again and again. Trying to find a reason. A loophole. Some kind of rational explanation. There wasn't one. I closed the laptop. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even get up. I just sat there, staring at the blank screen like it had taken something from me. After that, I stopped second-guessing myself. The gut feeling I'd been shoving down for weeks, the suspicion I kept dressing up as paranoia, it had a face now. A silhouette. A timestamp. The next evening, while Ellie was in the shower, I opened her tablet. She never used it much, at least not in front of me. Said it was a work device. But it was synced with her cloud account. Same email. Same storage. I didn't need to dig deep. In the documents folder, there were travel confirmations. Hotel bookings. One in Denver, another in Nashville. Cities she'd supposedly flown to for team development retreats. I remembered those trips. She came back with a tan and blurry photos of meeting rooms. I remembered how she'd brought me back a mug from the Denver airport. The flight was hell, she'd said. I missed you the whole time. But the reservations were for two. King bed. Special requests noted. Anniversary wine. My name wasn't anywhere on them. I kept looking. The messages came next. Ones she thought she had deleted. Most were gone, but some were still there in the recently deleted folder. A name kept appearing. Cole. Cole. I didn't know a Cole. She'd never mentioned him. He wasn't in her contacts. But the tone of the messages left no room for doubt. I can still smell you on my shirt. Can't stop thinking about our night by the water. Wish you were next to me now. Your neck. Your hands. Everything. There were photos too. A cabin in the woods. A blurry *T of 2 wine glasses by a fire. A hotel bed, slightly unmade. And one, God help me, of her feet beside a pair of men's boots. She had labeled the folder Client Travel Docs. It wasn't even clever. In the closet, I found a small box. One I didn't recognize, tucked behind an old pile of sweaters. It was a gift box, matte black with a silver ribbon. Inside was a man's watch, leather band, sleek face, wrapped and untouched. I lifted it, and there it was. A tiny engraving on the underside. For C, you always find time for me. My breath caught. I must have sat on the bedroom floor for half an hour, holding that watch, not moving. My ears were ringing. It felt like my chest had been hollowed out with a spoon. And the worst part? I didn't feel rage. Not then. Just grief. Like I'd just lost someone who was still alive. I put everything back. Closed the tablet. Folded the receipts. Tucked the box where I'd found it. I didn't confront her. Not that night. Not the next one either. Because what would be the point? The mask was already off. She walked through our days with the same routines. Cooked eggs in the morning. Scrolled on her phone. Kissed me goodnight like she was still in a play that she couldn't quit. But she never looked me in the eye for more than a few seconds. Not really. That was when the shift happened in me. I stopped trying to make sense of it. Stopped looking for the why behind her choices. It didn't matter. She had made her decisions, one small betrayal at a time. The affection she used to show me was now directed elsewhere. Somewhere I wasn't welcome. She came home late again that Friday. I was in the kitchen, just sitting there with a cold cup of coffee. She walked in humming. Sorry, she said, setting down her bag. Long meeting. Everyone's exhausted. Want me to make us something? No, I said quietly. I'm good. She paused, glanced at me, then nodded. Okay, I'll shower. She didn't ask why I was sitting in the dark. Didn't notice the coffee had gone untouched. Didn't notice me. And just like that, I knew something else. She didn't care if I knew anymore. She had made peace with the double life. Maybe even convinced herself it wasn't that bad. That she deserved happiness, wherever she could find it. That I'd understand. That I'd forgive her. But I couldn't. When someone hands you a lie and watches you swallow it, day after day, they stop seeing you as a person. You become a reflection, a mirror they perform for, but mirrors break. And mine was already cracked. The next morning, I made coffee for one. I sat on the porch and watched the sun come up, holding that image of Ellie and the man on the doorstep in my mind, etching it into my bones. I wasn't trying to hurt myself with it. I was trying to remember, trying to make it real. Because that's the thing about undeniable proof. It's not just about catching someone. It's about finally giving yourself permission to stop hoping. And once you do that, there's nothing left but clarity. After the proof, everything got quiet. Not just the house, me. My thoughts, my movements, my entire way of being. It was like someone hit the mute button on a life I'd been trying to narrate. And suddenly, there was just stillness. Not peace. Not yet. But stillness. I didn't confront Ellie. Not in the way I once imagined. There was no dramatic standoff in the kitchen. No yelling or flying accusations. I didn't throw the tablet at her or lay the watch on the table and demand explanations. I didn't want her to perform. I didn't want the script. Instead, I withdrew. Silently. Deliberately. The first thing I did was take down the photos. All of them. The smiling snap *TS on the fridge. The framed vacation *T in the hallway. The candid one by the stairs of her in my hoodie holding a mug and laughing at something I can't remember. I pulled them down and set them in a box. She noticed, of course. But she didn't say anything. That was the part that hit hardest. Next, I cleared our calendar. Wiped every shared event, every brunch with her parents, every dinner with friends we used to double date with. I didn't cancel them. I just deleted my name from the invites. Let her explain the silence. When she walked in the door after work, I didn't ask where she'd been. I didn't ask if she was tired or if her day was hard. I stopped pretending to care about the stories she didn't want to share anyway. She'd say, "Hey," and I'd nod. Maybe smile. Maybe not. I cooked dinner for one. Washed my own dishes. Stopped making the bed on her side. She still went through her motions, washing clothes, tidying the bathroom, but the air between us had cooled to something clinical. Cordial, at best. At night, I sat in the living room with low music playing, mostly instrumental stuff, background noise for the thoughts I couldn't say out loud. I'd sit for hours, staring out the window or into nothing, my hands wrapped around a mug of tea that always went cold. Ellie would pass through the room on her way to the bedroom, phone in hand, face lit by whatever conversation she was having. I stopped asking who. She stopped pretending to explain. We didn't sleep at the same time anymore. Some nights she went to bed early. Other nights I woke up to find the bed empty and the light in the guest bathroom on. At some point I moved to the couch. No announcement. No bags. I just started ending my nights there where I could feel the distance without her breathing beside me, reminding me what I'd lost. One afternoon, she sat across from me at the dining table. It had become our silent zone, the place where we existed in parallel. Two people in the same scene but acting in different plays. "Jason," she said, and her voice cracked a little on my name. I looked up halfway through my sandwich. "I know things feel off," she said. "I don't want it to be like this." I nodded. Took a bite. Chewed slowly. Swallowed. "Then don't let it," I said. She blinked. Looked down at her plate, untouched. She didn't respond. Didn't try again. That's the thing about guilt, it only speaks when it thinks it can win you back. When it thinks it can still wear the mask of love and be accepted. But I wasn't playing that part anymore. She didn't bring up the anniversary. Not once. It disappeared like a file erased from a drive, no mention, no follow-up, no apology. Just deleted. The mask had slipped completely now. She moved through the house with mechanical grace, like a tenant occupying space that wasn't hers. Sometimes I'd hear her talking in the other room, soft laughter and murmurs I knew weren't meant for me. She didn't try to hide it anymore. There's a kind of grief that comes after betrayal that isn't about the loss of the person, it's the loss of the illusion. The idea that someone knew you, chose you, loved you with intention. Once that illusion shatters, everything else is just noise. Habits. Ghosts of routine. I remember sitting on the edge of the bed one morning while she was in the shower. I looked around the room, really looked, and I saw it differently. The painting she picked from that street artist on our trip to Asheville. The candle she never lit. Her necklace draped over the lamp. They weren't our things anymore. They were hers. Pieces of a life she had been curating apart from me for months. That day I started making lists. Not dramatic ones, just quiet logistics. What was hers? What was mine? What I needed to cancel? What I needed to reclaim? I removed her name from the Spotify family plan. Unfollowed her shared Pinterest boards. Changed my phone background from the picture of us at the lake to a photo I took of a quiet street downtown, empty, soft-lit, free. She didn't notice. Or if she did, she didn't care. Sometimes I'd catch her looking at me across the room. Not lovingly. Not angrily. Just measuring. Like she wasn't sure who I was anymore. Like she was trying to decide if I'd noticed yet. If I was going to snap or stay quiet. I stayed quiet. That silence was the only form of truth left between us. One night, I walked past the bedroom and saw her sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at nothing. Her shoulders were slumped. She wasn't on her phone. Wasn't reading. Just sitting there like she didn't know how to be alone in her own body. For a second, I almost said something. Almost asked her if she was okay. But then I remembered Cole. The messages. The watch. The laugh on the porch. I remembered how easy it had been for her to lie to me. How natural. And I kept walking. She didn't call after me. The nights grew colder. I opened the windows more often, letting the autumn air wash over the furniture. It helped clear the space. Made the silence feel less suffocating. More like a choice. Ellie began to pack small bags on weekends. Work off-site, she'd say. Early morning. I stopped asking when she'd be back. Stopped waiting up. Stopped hoping. Eventually, we stopped touching. There were no more accidental brushes of hands, no lazy Saturday stretches where our feet found each other under the covers. Even our toothbrushes stood farther apart in the holder, like they knew the distance had become permanent. I started sleeping better. Not longer. Not deeper. But better. It was a tiredness I could understand, not one weighted by confusion or second-guessing. It was the kind of sleep that comes when you've accepted what's been broken and stopped trying to glue it back together. I knew what was coming next. I think she did too. But neither of us said it. And so, the silence stayed. Inside the house. Inside the space between us. Inside me. And for the first time in a long time, that silence felt like something I could trust. It didn't happen suddenly. The decision. It wasn't some cinematic moment where I flipped a table or screamed her name. It was quieter than that. Softer. Like a breath held too long finally being released. One morning, before the sun came up, I stood in the hallway outside our bedroom, our former bedroom, and I realized I couldn't do it anymore. Not just the marriage. The charade. The waiting. The quiet war of glances and half-sentences. The illusion that there was anything left to salvage. I didn't need more proof. I had seen the full picture. So I started moving. Not emotionally. Not with words. With action. It began with boxes. Cardboard ones I picked up from the hardware store down the street. I brought them into the living room like any other task on a to-do list. I didn't rush. I didn't hide them. I set them in a neat row along the wall and labeled each one: closet, bathroom, desk, miscellaneous. The next day, when Ellie left for another off-site meeting, I got to work. I went through our closet and pulled everything that was hers. Every blouse, every coat, every pair of shoes with the little green tags from the store she loved. I folded them gently, there was no rage in me, only precision, and packed them carefully. I boxed her books, her bath products, her makeup drawer which still held the lipstick she wore on our third date. I even emptied the junk drawer in the kitchen, the one she'd always said was organized chaos. The chaos, I noticed, had mostly been hers. It took hours. By the time I was done, our home felt lighter. Not empty. Not yet. But less occupied by pretense. I didn't throw anything away. I didn't damage a single thing. This wasn't about revenge. It was about clarity. I loaded everything into my car, trunk and back seat filled to the roof, and drove to her sister's house. Claire was always kind to me even though we'd grown distant over the past year. She didn't ask questions when I arrived. Just opened the garage, helped me unload, and said she'll come get it when she's ready. On the way back, I stopped at a locksmith. There was no drama about it. I handed them the paperwork, confirmed the appointment, and by evening, the front door had a new code. A new lock. A new beginning. I didn't leave a note. Her key I placed gently in the mailbox. I removed her access from our shared streaming accounts. Disconnected her email from the smart home system. Even the Wi-Fi password got a reset. It wasn't about spite. It was about boundaries. She didn't live here anymore, not in the way that mattered. That evening I cleaned. Not just tidied, cleaned. The kind of deep, cathartic clean that feels like an exorcism. I scrubbed the counters, vacuumed every corner, aired out the guest room where I'd been sleeping. I opened the windows wide and let the cool air rush in. I made dinner for one. A real dinner. Steak, roasted potatoes, green beans. I set one place at the table. Ate in silence. Didn't check my phone once. When the doorbell rang, I knew it was her. She stood there, not holding anything. No bags. No groceries. Just herself. Her hair was pulled back like she'd been in a rush. Her expression was tight but not surprised. She tried the handle first. Found it locked. Her eyebrows knit together, not in confusion, but in realization. I opened the door slowly. "Hey," she said. "Hi. Did something happen to the lock?" "Yes," I said. "It's been changed." She blinked, absorbing it. "Why?" I stepped back just enough so she could see behind me the bare spaces where her things had been. The single coat on the hook. The empty shelf by the bathroom. The table set for one. "I packed your things," I said. "They're at Claire's." Her lips parted slightly. Her throat moved like she wanted to speak but couldn't find the words. "You can check the garage," I added. "She knows." She began, then stopped. I didn't step aside to invite her in. I didn't offer tea. I didn't reach for her hand the way I used to when she was upset. "I think it's time," I said, not harshly. Just truthfully. She looked at me for a long moment, and in her eyes I saw the truth settle. The acknowledgement. Not shock. Not anger. Just finality. She nodded slowly. "I didn't expect." "I know," I said. "But you should have." A pause. "Then there's no message? No letter or explanation?" "There doesn't need to be one," I replied. We stood there for a beat longer, the cold air slipping between us like a curtain. Then she stepped back. She didn't cry. Didn't beg. She didn't rage or plead or quote some memory like a wee asterisk p asterisk n. She just turned and walked back to her car. The engine started. The headlights came on. And then she was gone. The silence that followed wasn't oppressive. It was clean. I closed the door. Locked it. Walked back to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. My reflection in the window was tired, yes. But steady. Whole. I sat on the couch, wrapped myself in a blanket, and for the first time in months, the house didn't feel haunted. It felt like mine. No ghosts. No guesses. No waiting for a voice to call from the other room pretending everything was okay. Just absence. And strangely, it didn't hurt. Because absence, I've learned, is sometimes the most honest companion of all. 3 days passed before I saw her again. She didn't call or text. Just showed up on the porch in a raincoat, hair pulled back, no bags, no umbrella. Just her, like she wasn't sure if she'd be let in. I opened the door and stood there without speaking. "I'm not here to ask for anything," Ellie said quietly. I think you deserve to hear it." I didn't move. But I didn't close the door either. She looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically, but in the way someone does when the truth strips away the version of themselves they tried to keep up. "I wasn't honest," she began. "It started months ago. At first it was small. Just texts. Harmless things. But then I wanted to see him more. I kept thinking I could control it, that I could manage both lives." Her voice didn't shake. She wasn't emotional. There were no grand gestures, no "please take me back." Just words. Flat, even, like reading a confession from a page. "I knew I was losing you," she said. "But I was selfish. I thought I could still keep the parts of you I liked while chasing something else I couldn't even explain." I nodded once. "So why now?" She looked away. "Because when I walked away from here, I thought it would hurt more. But it didn't. Not in the way I expected. It was like I'd already left a long time ago. And I think you had too." She stepped back, hands in her pockets. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted to say it out loud. That I did this. And I'm sorry. I didn't speak. Not because I was angry. Because there was nothing left to say." She had broken something, yes, but it had been cracked for a while. She seemed to understand. She turned, walked back to her car, and drove off without looking back. There was no goodbye. Just absence. Within a month, I moved to Austin. Took a faculty position at a university with a quieter campus, more trees, less noise. I rented a one-bedroom apartment near the river. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. I adopted a shepherd mix from a shelter. They told me he was older, had a limp, and probably wouldn't get adopted. I told them that made two of us. His name's Leo now. Each evening, I sit on the porch with a cup of tea while Leo dozes at my feet. The air is warm even at dusk. And the silence, it no longer feels empty. It feels earned. I kept the old phone, the one with her voice message from our anniversary. I played it once more. "Hey babe, don't go anywhere tonight, okay?" I deleted it. She asked me to stay. And I did. Too long, maybe. But I stayed until I saw the truth. Until I chose myself. Loneliness comes and goes, but it no longer frightens me. There's no waiting for footsteps that don't arrive. No pretending. No guessing. Just quiet. And in that quiet, something new has taken root. Peace. The kind that doesn't ask for permission. The kind that stays.